Well, thank you everyone for joining, and welcome to this live panel discussion on emerging from the pandemic in a stronger, fairer, balanced world, especially as it comes to gender diversity in the workplace. With all of the publicity around working from home and increased flexibility, everyone assumed this would benefit women. Instead, we have seen a rise in social inequality, an increased burden on primary carers, who are more often women, and a tendency to hire the safe option in a time of turbulence. The World Economic Forum published the Global Gender Gap Index in March of 2021, so just early this year, which is an overall measure of gaps in economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment across 156 countries. And the average, what they saw, the average distance completed to parity is their measure, is 68%, which is actually a decline over the prior year of 0.6 percentage points. So there is some evidence now to say what's been the impact of the pandemic on women and the gender gap in particular across those areas. When we look at economic participation and opportunity, that same number is 58%. And that is driven largely by income disparities and a persistent lack of women in leadership positions. So with that context, our objective with our time today is to share some of the thinking around onboarding, engaging, and promoting a diverse and remote workforce, and how we're creating a better working environment for women and, importantly, for men. And so we have a formidable panel of experts today on our panel. We have Pamela Hackett. Pamela is the CEO of Proudfoot, a global consultancy in operational and digital transformation, which was formed in 1946. She has led the business for the past 4 years and has worked in Australia, Africa, Hong Kong, the US, Europe, and is now based in Toronto. Her passions lie in sustainable business and leaving every client better off than when they arrived. Next up, we have Wendy Palmer. Wendy is the COO of the UK technology business at HSBC and the global DEI leader for the technology business. She has been at HSBC for nearly 4 years, having previously worked at Lloyds, BT, and Barclaycard in finance, IT, and operations roles. Wendy's a proud ally of the LGBT community and an advocate for women's domestic abuse. And finally, we have Denise Nelson. Denise is the Director of Data Center Marketing at NVIDIA, which is a global software and hardware business responsible for the graphics processing unit. I had to look that up, Denise, which is so cool, which was pivotal to the growth of the PC gaming market. She previously worked at Intel, HP, and Dell in senior marketing roles. At Intel, Denise was president of the network of Intel African Americans, working with board members and executives to enhance talent development, mentoring, and retention programs. So thank you everyone for joining us today. But firstly, we might ask the audience a question. And you can, I think, Tran, you can enter into the chat box. So I wanted to know, has anyone in the last year joined your firm remotely, so a new firm remotely, or have you hired into your firm or into your teams remotely? So if you could just drop a quick note there so we can see what your experience has been. And Fran will monitor those. Yes, hundreds of people. Lots of remote hiring. Excellent. Okay. We've all got some experience of it, it seems like. Okay, so first question to you, Denise. You started NVIDIA in August last year in a remote working environment. And what was your experience of onboarding and also working from home as a new executive?
Yes, so thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in the panel. I really appreciate it. And last year was just, a huge blessing given the, world's, the dynamic taking place in the world, a pandemic, social, justice, and all the unrest that we saw. I received a call from NVIDIA, which is a company that I had been tracking fiercely and looking at their every moves. And so when they called and I had an opportunity to interview and accepted the position to lead their marketing from a strategic perspective in leading them and positioning in the data center, I was thrilled. But here we are. I've not met anyone, and we are relying on technology. Technology, was the hero of 2020 because it served billions of people and allowed us to engage similar, as we're doing this morning. And so I met colleagues, interacted with my bosses, met stakeholders. My boss created a 30, 60, 90-day plan, which was an amazing blueprint. That way I didn't have to hunt. I knew exactly, what to do, how to ramp, who to talk to, what exercises and what, initiatives I needed to really focus on. And it was amazing. It was one of the best onboarding I could say that I can recall in a really long time. And all this while, we're dealing with a pandemic and quarantining at home, that those day-to-day interactions really became so meaningful. We laughed, we talked, we strategized, we executed, we got things done, and we bonded. So it was a great experience, and without meeting anyone, they, 9 months in, relocated me to the Bay Area, and I'm looking forward to meeting my colleagues and giving everyone a hug real soon.
Yeah, I bet you are. And will you take some of those aspects forward with future onboarding of your teams?
Absolutely. I think that the pandemic and what we have all navigated through has been a game changer. It has changed the mold and in terms of talent recruitment, and companies can now look globally or within markets, across the US outside of their headquarters to find talent. And we now have a model that works in terms of not just finding the talent, but getting them up and running and onboarding and being productive in their new role. So yes, I think it's been a game changer.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's lots of positives. Pamela, can I ask you a question? You work with many, many organizations of all different sizes and in different countries. What's been your experience and observations on how some of those companies have engaged a diverse and remote workforce?
So for some of them, I think it was a little bit of a shock, as the understatement of the year to go as remote as they did. I think the big learning for all of them has been that all of that workforce that they thought was resistant to change was not. And so, the big lesson learned, I think, out of the pandemic is to stop talking about a highly resistant workforce and start talking about what we do to enable people to actually move forward and change. And so I think the big lesson learned for them was that, yes, they can change, and the change could be huge. It could be an entire organization going home. But more importantly, when they went home, recognizing that it was still all about how you connect. And so, we saw a lot of organizations scramble and spend a lot of time talking about how am I going to keep in touch with my people, and almost I don't want to say excusing, but almost excusing or making an excuse around, I don't really want to bother them too much. I don't want to feel like I'm micromanaging. And so the real learning for them has been that you're not micromanaging when you check in with people, and you do need to check in with people. And if anything, it's given a cadence that wasn't there before, but was needed before. And so, we know that the more active management is in connecting with people, the better the business, the safer it is, the more productive it is, the more engaging it is. So I think the big learning for a lot of our clients is that it's okay to connect with people. And actually now that some of their workforce, some of them big part of the workforce, some of them not, went remote, really make sure that you do connect. So put that rhythm into your day. A little bit later, I can give you a little bit of a tool around what that really means. But for the most part, it's been let's connect and let's make sure that everyone understands it's okay to connect and that you should do that routinely and put that rhythm into your business, whether you're remote or not. So that cadence has become much more stronger when you needed it anyway.
And have you seen any differences in programs that were targeted to men and women or across broader forms of diversity?
I think that the big thing that comes up all the time is actually the question of childcare. That was probably the biggest conversation, and that's the difference between being able to successfully work, and whether it's remotely, whether it's at a place of work. And remember, there's a huge amount of the workforce that didn't go home, that still got up every day and went to a workplace or went and did something. The big change has been, or rather no, the big spotlight has been understanding the impact of childcare. If you don't have access to affordable childcare, or to someone who can help you have childcare, or you don't have a husband or a family member in the house who can enable childcare, then you're already at a disadvantage. And so the conversation has been around, how do you take the things that are disadvantaging women, is that a word? How do you remove the disadvantages from the workplace or from the work scenario so that women are freed up to do the work that they can do? And there's a lot of those, even before you get to the point of talking about how to implement new and different ideas. How about we just go and remove all the ones that place people at a disadvantage? And specifically in this case, women. And when it comes to childcare, that's a massive influence on the ability. I mean, that's why you've seen, I think the last stat that I saw was that, I think it was in the US, 4 times, the number of people leaving the workforce, 4 times as many were women. And a lot of that was around the ability to have childcare.
Okay, very good point. I was reading this morning about Linda Grattan, the Professor of Management at London Business School, talking about how the ways that most companies operated before the pandemic were fairly frozen. And since the onset of the pandemic, they are more likely to be unfrozen and reassessing basic assumptions about work, management, and workplaces. Pamela, I know you had a question you wanted to ask our panelists about this.
Well, I think it's for me, the real challenge is if things have stepped back, and your percentage at the beginning is actually quite minuscule, but for the people who it affects 100%, it's a 100% failure, right? And I think that's what people have to remember, is that it's, when you talk about percentages and you say, is 85% okay? Or, should it be 50 or is 100 what you're aiming for? Well, for the percent is a person, and for that person, it's a 100% failure. And so you've got to look at it that way. So I step back and I think to myself, geez, we have gone backwards for some way greater than the average percentages. And our real challenge going forward is it's not to catch up. It's to catch up and accelerate. It's to not have the same issues and speed bumps that we had before. And it's to get right out in front of this once and for all. It's a problem that affects every part of business, not just the individuals, but your business results. And so you've really got to put that at the top of the list now and say, okay, how do we not repeat all the mistakes of the past? How do we get people on board? How do we engage everybody in the conversation and get them really on board with this? And then how do we just get past all of that stuff that were the road bumps before and get right out in front of it? And I think that's a redefinition of the problem statement now. The problem statement in the past was, boy, how do we get these guys to understand that it's tough for women, or boy, this, or no, it's how do we actually solve this and get right out in front of it, because the pandemic has brought everything to light.
Wendy, I know that you've been working a lot on the sort of broad topic of flexibility. What was your experience last year, and how has this changed over the course of the last 12 months?
So I think, for us in an investment bank, flexibility was not something that was ever even discussed. The option to work from home was almost frowned upon, I think, in sort of pre-COVID days. I think what COVID-19 has actually done for us has brought flexibility to life, because we've seen not only can people within technology work from home, but actually the traders have been able to work from home. They had to for a significant period of time whilst we worked in almost like a business continuity backup kind of situation. What that does, though, is it opens up the door, because previously where you would have you know, not just females, but the entire kind of diverse population, whether that's, you know, the BAME minority, people with disabilities, LGBTQ community, everybody is now on almost a level playing field because nobody has been visible, everybody's been working from home. And yes, to Pamela's point, I think, you know, females probably have been slightly more disadvantaged because we worry more about the kind of the home work-life balance. We've probably been more likely to have done the schooling. You know, we are worrying about that kind of blur between finishing the day's work and moving on to the, you know, the evening's chores, the weekend's chores, whatever that may be. But that level playing field, allowing it to kind of reset, has gone, well, actually, we're all in the same boat. So how do we think about how we want to move forward? How do we think about how we kind of turn that dial and shift it moving forwards? And flexibility now is, you know, we're not only thinking about it in terms of now and kind of future of work, we're thinking about it even on return to work. You know, what happens post 21st of June when the government says we can all go back? Does it all suddenly switch on and go back to normal? Or is there that period of grace? What's going to happen in terms of, is everybody back in the office? Is there a certain amount of people back in the office? Or is it a hybrid way of working? So there's lots of different thoughts going on in that space. But also, I think we have, you know, again, back to something that Pamela touched on earlier, it's about resetting. So Pamela's question around learning from the mistakes of the past, how do we, you know, not continue to go backwards and go forwards by making bigger and greater steps and taking those learnings. I think those learnings come from things like where traditionally in the past, you know, where roles were advertised, a man would apply for a job, whether he's got the skills to do the job or not. He'd go, yeah, I can do that. I'll go and apply for that. And females are slightly more likely to go, oh, I tick that box and I tick that box, but I haven't got that, so I won't apply. Now, actually, we're going, do you know what? You know, I will apply and let's apply. And we're trying to teach those learnings through, you know, more mentoring, more training, more connectivity sessions. Again, back to something that Pamela said, you know, we're opening up more groups, more chats, more forums to get people to connect more, talk more about the issues that they face in whichever community they sit. And that is opening the door for people to actually say, yeah, actually, I will try that. And we found more females coming to the table now and saying, actually, I've set my sights on this new role and I acknowledge there are things I don't have, but I've applied, or I acknowledge the things I don't have. And actually, I've reached out to people to say, help me or educate me. So there are more people coming forward and reaching out, you know, across the community where I work to say, I need to get these skills. How can I do that? And we've offered more training through LinkedIn. We've opened a technology academy, which we are gearing towards the ethnic minorities and the gender diverse population to encourage them to take more training. So I think, you know, all of those things coming into alignment will help us to move that dial quicker and to learn from some of the mistakes that we've probably made within the past, and to get that flexibility back for everybody as we move to that more hybrid kind of working system as we return to the workplace.
Georgina, can I make a comment on that?
Please,
You know,
Pamela.
Wendy, what you've just done there is, I think, one of the key things about this whole puzzle, and that's that I think people oftentimes, they really want to, you know, again, level the playing field, everybody, all the stakeholders, doesn't matter who you are. For the most part, everybody wants to do something about the problem, but they don't know how. They either don't know how or they don't know how to participate. And what you just rattled off there is a whole bunch of pragmatic solutions that take a concept and then say, right, then this is what you can do about it. Let's open up those chats. Let's do, you know, this. And I think if we can have more conversations around what are the pragmatic solutions, what does that concept mean, or what could it mean in reality, and therefore what's the tool or the action or the activity that you can put in place and implement it and then try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, let's tweak it. If it really doesn't work, let's can it, say, geez, we messed that up. Now let's go for something else.
Yeah. And it's, you know what, it's providing that support network as well. So, you know, making sure one of the things that we really focus on is that kind of mental health awareness, making sure that people are aware, you know, again, you know, white, female, ethnic, whatever it may be, it is all about being able to have that conversation and say, hey, I'm not okay and I need to do something about it. And where can I get that support? You know, not just through chatting with co-workers, but also through proper formal support networks that we are, you know, setting up for people to use and have access to. and to be able to have those conversations. So I think that's really important.
One of the things that I've also observed as we talk about gender and challenges that women face in the workplace, and especially around childcare, I've been on more Zoom calls where a toddler or a 5-year-old, and I've been cooing, with hi, someone just joined our meeting. And it's been across the board, whether it was an executive or someone who's junior in their career. And there's been a blending of our sort of tolerance of, yeah, this person's a mom and there's a child, and I can wait a few seconds for her to attend to the child, get the child settled, and get back to our conversation around business. It has no impact in their ability to deliver and have impact in the company. And so that's one thing that I hope continues forward in terms of making it better. Like, a woman should not have to make a choice between, if I don't have proper childcare, am I going to advance in my career? You still have the skills and the ability and the talent to get the job done. And if we can all, I think, just be a little bit more patient in difficult situations where a child may enter a meeting, that could be a huge game changer in itself. And so that's just something I wanted to add to the conversation that I've observed.
Do you know what, Denise? And sorry, it's just that's really invoked something in me, because one of the really important things I always talk about when I talk about diversity and inclusion is actually, it's not just measuring it through stats that say we have X percentage of females or X percent. It's about people feeling inclusive, and it's about a sense of belonging. And I feel really passionate about that. And what you just talked about there, Denise, about, people having their children on the screens and, popping in, and it's, I think that's really helped that inclusive working environment, because not only do you see people as mums or dads or whatever that may be, but you also get a sense of the person. And I feel like there is greater connectivity through that, how you see people interact at home. I've been on calls with the teams in India, and I've had their children dancing for me in the background to the latest Bollywood song, and it's absolutely amazing. You just don't get in the office. It's fantastic. So yeah, absolutely, couldn't agree more on that point. It's really
Thanks,
important.
Wendy. We might ask the audience another question. So in the chat box, have you got any examples of what you did to engage a diverse and remote workforce? Things that worked well, practical examples that like we've been sharing now. Feel free to drop some comments in the chat box. Running activating inclusion workshops, fancy dress days that even excluded our EXCO team. Fantastic.
I'm liking that one. We've just run a glow up for LGBTQ where we had everybody do makeup like drag queens, which was fantastic.
Reciprocal mentoring. Thank you, Sue. Unconscious bias. Yes. Great. There's some really good examples.
This is the perfect example of the lawn mowing guy just showed up and he's right next to my window and I'm going, shh. Isn't that exactly the world that we live in?
That's great, Pamela. Wendy, I know you had Wendy Palmer, I know you had a question to the panelists on inclusion, the topic of inclusion more generally.
Yeah, I mean, mine is almost a little bit odd, given that we're talking about gender diversity in particular here. But my question was more around, in a world where, I think ever since COVID hit and we kind of moved through the whole, the situation in America after George Floyd, and we had the whole Black Lives Matter kicked off, and it was great. And we had, so much moved forward after that point. And we've almost, you know, we're turning the dial so fast that we've got people in the team who are saying, hey, what about me? You know, single white male over here, I'm feeling a little bit left out. And so my question to you guys was, how do we make sure that we're not driving towards positive discrimination and missing out, you know, our standard white male? Or a ginger white male, as one of my colleagues said to me today, hey, I'm ginger and white and male, and I'm feeling really left out. So,
you know, in answer to that, for what we're talking to a lot of our clients about is that I think you need a multi-stakeholder engagement plan. And so that you are working on a completely level playing field. And for some, the dial goes up a little bit more, women. And for others, maybe the dial doesn't go as far because they're already starting from a different position. But I think that you need that broad-based multi-stakeholder engagement plan. It's, you know, it's no different than engaging your workforce in general. Now let's get really specific. And then I think the other thing that we're talking and working with some clients on is we do this concept just called, it's really simple, aerial mapping. And instead of looking, you know, the old days, you do process mapping, you'd look at one process and then you wouldn't get all the stuff that connects. Well, it's all around aerial mapping and all the connections. And if you think about it, you aerial map the terrain of your business and you look for all those points where diversity, equity, inclusion pop up, where those conversations pop up, whether it's onboarding right through to retention, through to, you know, day job and so on. And then you have a conversation and you get all those multi-stakeholders and you say, what does that mean for all those stakeholders? And then which are the ones that we really need to dial up? And so I imagine there's something in there that, you know, that you could apply to your work to get those pragmatic solutions going so that you're not missing, so that you're not doing reverse. You're not reversing the dial on some guys.
Denise, did you want to add anything to that one?
Yes, of course, I have a crazy story I want to share.
Great, great.
For me, everything it's about the sandbox and sort of people's natural tendencies. And I think that Wendy's raising a great point in terms of talent management, right? So you want to make sure that if the white male in the room is the best talent at X, that talent gets nurtured, developed, etc. But I think that also when we look at how people play in the sandbox, naturally based on experience, right? I have an example of my move from Portland. I had a group of movers that were primarily white men, and the reason I point that out is because I was running around very conscious of, we have to, park at a certain place because someone else has this, time reserved, and we're not going to have access to the elevator because someone else has it. And this man went into his natural tendency of everything is negotiable. And so I left and, went off to run my errands and came back. Not only did he renegotiate where he could park, he negotiated to use the elevator with the other folks when they weren't using it. And instead of a 2-hour delay from us being able to complete my move, we finished early. And I took note of that and said, in my sandbox, I would have just, this is not negotiable. I'm following the rules and this is it. And this is what I have to do. His natural tendency was, this is negotiable. I don't have to sit here and wait for 2 hours before I can start a move and get it done. So let me go in and figure out where there's some points that I can, do some gives and gets and get my client moved in and out. And I think that that's what I tend to observe in general. I think that people have strengths, they have their experiences that they call upon. And many times I find white men as allies. They look and they say, well, wait a minute, this person can do this. Let me help them get it done because I can negotiate, I can open a door. So I think that we should be mindful of talent management, but also be present around experiential sort of IP, right? People have played in the sandbox for a very long time and they have skills that they've relied on. And I don't think that that's going to go away.
And Denise, perhaps share some an observation on joining NVIDIA remotely, working remotely. How do you think that's impacted gender parity? And hopefully there's some positive stories as well.
Absolutely. I think that NVIDIA, first of all, is just an amazing company from an innovation perspective, but they're also very, they have cultivated an environment that is, very woke. I can't think of another word to say that they are looking around, they're making observations, they're assessing how they can make a difference, and they've pulled that in internally. And so from a marketing perspective, I'm actually part of a Tiger team or a task force that's global in terms of representation, working on how we can stand up a system that integrates diversity and inclusion in our marketing sort of content in our marketing communications and how we tell our stories, and everything from our, plan of records where we work with our product managers. We want them to think about use cases, and we want them to think broadly and be open around, well, how does this particular use case play in different demographics, whether that's age, whether it's race, whether it's locale. Be mindful and ensure, that you're integrating, whether it's the stories, the images, the cultural aspects, so that you are bringing that full, sort of representation and voices to bear when we tell our stories to the world. And I just think it's amazing and wonderful. And I can't wait for a year from now when we can look back and see all the things that we've done.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait also, Denise. We might get our audience thinking about some questions. So if you have questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat and we can work through them. And in the meantime, I wanted to ask each of you, Pamela, Denise, and Wendy, what's your one wish for the next 12 months? So have a think about that, as well as our audience thinking about questions.
Shall I kick it off, Georgina? Yeah.
Beat me to it. Go on.
One of the things that I think every workplace is different, and no brainer. We're all working with different groups of people, all with different backgrounds, and so no one size fits all. And I think the ability to step back away from generalizations, and the only way you can do that is by really effectively listening to what your workplace, whether it's your team or whether it's your whole organization, different leaders at different levels. It's figuring out, how do you really get that unfiltered listening post into the business? How do you get, how do you get people to talk as if they're sitting at their kitchen table where, and full disclosure, I have no kids. And to be really absolutely honest, I have no idea how women with kids cope, because I struggle to get through my day with a dog and a husband, and I'm used to being a million miles a year on a plane. Suddenly I'm home for 18 months. I just think it's great I didn't kill my husband today. So for me, that's, the yardstick of being absolutely a great day. But I don't know how people can, how women can really cope with 3 kids, homeschooling, work, all that. I can't begin to understand it. But what I can try and do, because I'm in a position to do it, is to place into the week as many listening points as I possibly can to try to get that unfiltered view from people. So, and get that kitchen table conversation. Because, you know, I think about when I was growing up, I know it's a different world today, but when I was growing up, you know, there was mum, dad, my mum was German, my dad was English. There was World War III all the time, you know, between them, just culturally and from where they were coming from. There was the kids, and there was a conversation, and it didn't matter who you were. You talked about how your day went, talked about what teased you off, and then you talked about, and then, you know, the dad would do their role. Okay, let's figure out how to solve that. The mum would say, go talk to your dad. And then the mum would actually come and try to solve the problem. That was my life. And I just think, imagine if you had all those kitchen table conversations in your business every day. You know, how much better would your business be? So take the spirit of that and figure out how to really get the listening going and the conversation then around, okay, what do we need to do about it? So that would be mine. Sorry, I think that took a little bit long.
Great, Pamela. Thank you. Wendy.
So I'm going to play on that, really, talking about kind of the probably the mentoring and the training. Well, the children piece, actually, that's where I was going to go. I think my wish, because we've already started to move the dial so much in terms of trying to drive, you know, lots of different programs, and we are moving the dial, and we've seen, you know, great moves and steps in the way of pay parity in itself. I mean, we've even gone a step further than the government asks us to in terms of reporting, because we disaggregate right down to career band level. We also throw in the BAME reporting as well around the pay parity. So we are doing an awful lot more. But my wish for the next 12 months in terms of gender and diversity and really driving that would be probably in the space of the children. I mean, we've just moved into doing a lot of work with local schools. So around Tower Hamlets in London, we've been going into some of the local schools, and we've been doing it virtually, and it's been great. You know, I've been getting involved, and we've been encouraging the girls. I mean, it's inclusive to everybody, nobody is excluded, but we are directly focusing at the young girls to say, hey, come along and join our hackathon, you know, get involved in technology, come and see what you could do. And it's been, you know, it's been amazing to see, you know, the changes in just some of the kids that have been coming along and what they want to do. And, you know, one of the young lads that came made me laugh, because he said to me, oh, you know, when I grow up, I want to do your job. And I was like, what is it about my job that you like? And he went, well, you get to come into schools and meet people like us. It's really cool. And I was like, wouldn't that be fantastic if that actually was my job? I'd love that if that was like my day-to-day every day. So yeah, I'd really like to, my wish would be to continue that and really see it grow, and actually nurture a pipeline of graduates into the bank from more diverse areas and networks. I mean, we're currently sponsoring, in fact, we've got Stormzy on board. We're currently sponsoring a into Cambridge and Oxford. So we are encouraging, you know, more Black and ethnic minority to apply to help us to get into there. We've got another program running, which is all gender based, around encouraging, as I say, more kind of females into technology as a whole. So, you know, in 12 months' time, I'd like to see where we've got to with that. That would be my wish, I think.
Hey, Wendy and Denise, do you guys find in your businesses that women put their hand up enough? So when a role comes up, or when an experience, an opportunity, a something to do comes up, who puts their hand up most? Is there a difference? To say, pick me, I can do this.
I think, sorry, go on, Denise, I'll let you talk, because I've just been.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. I was just going to say that's a great question. And actually it connects with my answer in terms of my wish. I actually find, and it's across ethnicity, so whether it's African-American, Asian, younger women will typically approach me and want to have conversations around mentoring. And it's because I think they see me in a room, and I'm that person that's not afraid to say something. And they will, I've had people actually say, well, you know, I like the fact that you speak up, and I don't know how to do that. And I've actually mentored someone, you know, around, it was an Indian lady around, okay, you are a product manager for artificial intelligence. Are you kidding? No one understands what you're doing. You have lots of opportunity to talk and, you know, to contribute and look for opportunities when your the areas of your area of expertise map to the business strategy and goal. You think about how you can bring others along, and drive clarity of, vision or purpose or execution and tactics. And so I have very real conversations with young people, young women, I find especially, about how to leverage their voice. And then I've had others that have gotten themselves in trouble because they read Lean In and they're going to their managers and saying, I want to raise now. And it's like, okay, let's slow it down. Here's how this actually works. Let's talk about this. So I think that, Pamela, young women are still looking for role models to help them navigate and figure out how to find their voice so that they can raise their hand. And so my wish is always to find those connections where I can pay it forward. I've never been shy, if you could figure that out, but I always had people that mentored me in other areas where I needed development. And so it's very important to me to pay it forward. So I'm always looking for those opportunities. And I'm very conscious of make a difference, make sure that you connect, you follow through, you help someone else.
I really like that, Denise, helping women find their voice so they can raise their hand.
Can I just pick on a point that Denise just said there, which is actually really relevant? So you just talked about having a lady who's a product manager for artificial intelligence. And that is something actually that we've really found, certainly within technology for us, is that previously, most of the people that worked in artificial intelligence were actually male. And when they were actually, coming up with ideas and solutions, because men and women do think differently, often the solutions that they came up with for some of the apps or some of the things that we were actually developing weren't as easily usable for females, or they couldn't actually follow what had to happen. So again, it's just, it's a great example of where we do need kind of more females putting their hands up, because actually we think differently, we operate differently, and we're tuned in differently, and you need that cross balance and that cross mix to actually make things work and function properly.
Thanks, Wendy. We have a couple of questions from the audience. So this is from Pat, thank you. What is the panel's view on how will we know when we have reached a point of genuine parity?
Aim for 100%.
In terms of pay?
Well, I think it could be any of the above. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Pamela, aim for nothing less than 100.
And I don't mean that in a silly way, in that, are you going to get to 100? Boy, it's like saying you're not going to have any quality issues at work. But unless you aim for it, it's that old concept of every aircraft has to land, right? You don't expect 1% of aircrafts not to land. You get on a plane, you expect to get to the other end. And if it doesn't land, that's a problem. So I think that the more you aim for 100%, the broader your view around opportunities to close the gap. If you say, let's aim for 80%, and then you don't look at what that other 20% issues are, then you stop yourself and you limit yourself from looking at all the other solutions that may be needed, or you're not as creative. So I just think if you aim for 100%, then you're looking at the big, broader picture, and you're saying, boy, there's got to be other solutions, better solutions out there.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think for me, it's when I sit in the room, whatever that room may be, and if we run like a town hall and there are thousands of people within some of the town halls we run, when I look around, I should be able to see not only a diverse workforce, but back to my earlier point, I want to see a workforce that actually has a sense of belonging. I should be able to go to any member of the team and then really feel like they belong within the technology team, or the wider bank team, or whatever that may be. It's that sense of belonging. It's visually seeing that diverse workforce, and it's continually driving it to that 100% mark that Pamela said.
And won't it be great when you go on LinkedIn and you don't continuously see a stream that says first woman in this role, first woman in that role, or a woman did this, and it just says a great person did a great job and they got promoted into this role.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's around operating with purpose and in being intentional in terms of inclusion. and diversity. So I joked with a colleague of mine yesterday. We were in a meeting where we were talking about beta programs and virtual reality, and how can we get more diverse participants, and laying the foundation of tapping into organizations like the National Black MBA or National Black Society of Engineers or HSBC schools, and the folks that are currently in technology tracks. And as we sat there and we talked about and sort of constructed this model of, we are not only going to pull through short term and hit results in terms of our beta programs and having developers and people of color reflect, their culture, who they are, and compete for us to perhaps adopt their idea, that we're going to put a pipeline in place that 10 years from now, we can look back and see, Pamela, what you just said, that it's no longer a conversation around, well, how do we fix this? But it's a mosaic that represents the world in terms of talent, right? And what people can do. So that's how I would. I don't know that there's a endpoint. I think it's an ongoing, purposeful, intentional effort.
Thank you, Denise. We have a question from Dahlia. As so many women have been forced to leave the workforce, is anything being done to seek them out or actively support their re-entry?
Yeah, we've definitely been hiring and recruiting people who are looking for more flexible work or looking for part-time work, because I think with the economy changing, there's been significant amounts of women who were either hit because they worked in retail or different kinds of roles, where their skills were not their skills, where the industry has either declined or shops have closed, restaurants have closed, and they've come back onto the market. And we are actively searching via LinkedIn to look for people that we can retrain, because the view that we are taking is, you can't hire attitude or behavior. If you've got someone with the right attitude and behaviors, that's great. And actually we can train skills. So yes, absolutely, 200%. That is one of the things that we are focusing on.
You're seeing a lot of the big companies do that as well. We work a lot with the Infosys.
Yes.
250,000 people worldwide. They have a university, and one of their big credos, I really love this company, and the more I learn about them, the more I work with them. But one of their credos is that you've got to upskill the world. And so they're taking it upon themselves to really go out and search for those people and upskill them and say, okay, this proportion of the population is underserved right now. They're never going to get a job if they stay in that bucket of skill. And so we, as a corporation that's got the time, the money, the inclination, the budget, we need to do, it's incumbent on us to do this and to seek them out and to put them into skills programs. The other thing I really like, the mining industry, as much as they get such bad flack for being that horrible, dirty industry that, destroys the world. I don't mean that with sarcasm. I mean, that is that's the rap that the mining industry gets, when actually there's a huge amount of good that the mining industry does, and they have really changed the game in mining. There's a lot of different ways that they're working in it. And for the most part, no, for a lot of it is not as horrible and dirty as it was, but they have taken it upon themselves to really search out and make sure that they are upskilling people into technology, into autonomous, autonomous trucks and rail and all the things that they're doing to get the future population ready to come and be the workforce of the future. And so I think there's a lot of pockets of really good news out there where the companies that do have the money, the time, the inclination, the desire are doing some brilliant things to move things along. And I do think it's incumbent on them. You can't leave it all up to government. I think that if the companies have that, that's that whole concept of that purpose, of really being bigger than the profitability that you're trying to achieve.
Thanks, Pamela. Question from Linda. In businesses where there are a few senior female role models and mentors, how do you get the more senior men to sponsor the younger women?
You ask them.
So I was just going to say exactly the same. Ask. Yeah.
Literally, you ask and you say, I will not take too much of your time, and then you be purposeful about how you engage, be prepared, have an agenda, have, you know, specific area of focus that you would like that mentor, you think that mentor could help you develop, and respect their time, but you've got to ask.
Yeah, and it's about reverse mentorship as well. So we sell it on a two-way process. So it's not about, you know, the senior male executive mentoring the younger woman. It's also about them getting a perspective from somebody else, from either, you know, a different, diverse thought process. And we really do push the reverse mentoring agenda.
And
Great, Wendy.
don't wait for the company to do it. I think one of the best things you can do for yourself is put together your own personal board. Go out there and find the people that you really respect, that you really like, and put that board together for yourself, and then put the cadence in place to contact them and to be, you know, regular with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about you, right? Nobody else is going to do that for you. You have to do it and drive it yourself, you know. So as many, you know, as much as companies want to do that, and we do drive that forward, take some accountability for yourself, you know, get in front of the people that you want to talk to, because what's the worst that can happen, right? I mean, I reached out to our group CEO. The worst he could have said was no, but he didn't. He sat down and said, yes, I will make time.
Yeah.
That's
I think
great.
there's also value in terms of putting the structure, and also making sure that the gatekeepers, those men in power, are supported with this as well, because in you know, we live in a world where we have Me Too and all kinds of things happening, and you know, young impressionable female colleagues might not be comfortable being themselves in that situation, and vice versa with that individual himself or themselves. So there's impetus in making sure that you do have some kind of framework or structure that actually gives that clarity and creates a safeguarding space for people to feel comfortable to do this in a very effective way.
Great point. Thank you. And then the final question from David: what is the opportunity for diversity presented by the generational shift, with 75% of the workforce who will be millennials by 2025?
I think it's going to be a natural, you know, to a degree, there is going to be a natural movement to that. If I chat with all my nieces and nephews who fall into that category, you know, bless them, they don't see gender, they don't see color, they just see a bunch of people, and they naturally work in very different ways, collaborative ways that we just didn't do.
They're not prepared to stand for what they don't believe in either. I mean, that's what I find, you know, even with my own children, I mean, they're 23 and 18, you know, and if they don't believe in something, they won't get behind it, you know. And my own daughter left her role because of that exact reason. So yeah, I think there's going to be a huge shift. I think they will drive it forward like we've not done before.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
to that point of you know, that guy who's still the no offense to the guys who are on the call, I think there's 2 or 3 of you, right? But that guy who is still of that old ilk, who may make people feel uncomfortable, I think the millennials will drive that behavior away, because they will be the first guys who get on social media and say, you know, I talked to this guy and he was a jerk and he did that, and it's just going to be out there. And I mean, poor soul who actually had nice intentions and didn't really mean to do that, because he's going to get, you know, blasted with the same stuff as well. So there's good and bad of it, but I think they'll drive a lot of that stuff, I hope.
No, just to add to that, actually, a little funny story there, because I often, so a lot of the meetings that I go in, I tend to be the most kind of senior female person in the room, or sometimes the only female person in the room. And often we'll be in a meeting and they'll say, and you take the minutes. And I just sat and I do it and I don't think about it. And a couple of weeks ago, I was actually on a call and you know, the usual happened, and they went, and Wendy will take the minutes. And I went, actually, Wendy won't. You take the minutes. And there was like tumbleweed on the call and everybody went silent. And then someone went, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And you could see him like faffing around trying to find a piece of paper, and it was like 5 minutes before he did. And then the minutes came out and everybody complained. They were saying, you missed this point, you missed that point, you missed this point. So I think it's, you know, it's it's okay for us to push back as well.
I say politely, don't you have a pen? Do you need a
Denise, I think you were going to add something there.
No, Wendy's point was funny. I think that Pamela, you hit on it. What I was going to talk about was the way that we work and engage has changed so much because of technology and social media, and with artificial intelligence, we are living in the age of AI, and it's going to change how we interact and engage in ways that we can't imagine right now. And I think millennials are going to absolutely capitalize on that, and they have a sense of freedom around who they are, what they believe in, and how they team up. It's different than 20 years ago. And so I'm very optimistic. I think that the future is bright and it's going to be amazing.
Great, Denise. Well, I think that's a really good note to land on. So thank you so much to our panelists today, Denise, Wendy, and Pamela, and for you all in the audience for joining in and spending time with us today. It's been such a rich conversation. I hope you've got some little nuggets out of it. And, I think we can all be optimistic about the better working environment that we're creating for all. So thank you, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Definitely.